Pub Battles Antietam 1862. This is a game in the pub battle system. I reviewed one games in the system before, that was Brandywine, and the game system in general is exactly the same. So if you're ready, watch that video, or you know the system, you know how to play Antietam. Two-player game mainly, with, yes, an element of fog of war, which of course is specifically meant for two players. But suppose that you don't have somebody to play with, you can still play the game solitaire by controlling both sides at the best of your possibilities, and that is how I personally played the game. I lost part of the fog of war, but I still had a great time. And there's still gonna be a lot to decide at the last minute, a lot of things that happen that you don't expect, because the game is a chit pull game. That means that the military units are divided into groups, and you take these chits, you shuffle them, and then you draw them randomly, and the group indicated there is the next one that will activate, so you don't know exactly who is gonna go next. Not just that, but then players also can use their commanders that are represented by cubes to try to alter the order in which the chits are drawn. If your chit is drawn but you don't want to go yet, you can roll a die and try to see if you can delay. If your chit was not drawn but you really want to go, then you can roll a die to try to activate a commander out of order. So again, a lot of flexibility there, but also flexibility that is relying on a die roll. So again, unpredictability and perfect situation if you are a solitaire war gamer such as myself. I probably play 80% of my war games solitaire, more since the pandemic. The game is played on this beautiful map, which is made of this thick material that I don't know what it is. It feels like fabric, plastic base fabric kind of thing, and I guess the idea is that you're bringing it to a pub. This way you spill drinks on it, it doesn't get ruined. Then the military units are represented by wooden blocks with stickers on them indicating the identity of the unit, the level, the quality. For example, this one is green. This is also green, but in another way. Oh man, that was sad. Was that a pun? I guess. So these blocks will go on the board. I'm placing them a bit randomly. They'll go on the board, and you will move them like you would do in a miniature game. That is, you can see the map is not divided into hexes, into squares. It's not a gridded map, but you will use a ruler with different movement for foot units and mounted units. Almost everybody is foot units here. And then you simply move like so. And that also means there's going to be some ambiguities. For example, you apply terrain effects if most of a unit is in that terrain. So is that unit fully on a hill, sort of on a hill? Is better. Again, if you play solitaire, then you can make those judgment calls. Or if you play with a very friendly friend, not somebody who's there to exploit every possible wrinkle of the design to try to win at all costs, they would make things absolutely annoying. It's better when players are playing in the spirit of trying to simulate the battle, get a sense of what happened, see the what-ifs of history. That is the fun of wargaming anyway, so don't play with those annoying people that want to win at all costs. It would be particularly annoying, especially in a situation such as this one, where there may be some ambiguity. And again, those ambiguities are better solved by people who care about gameplay more than they care about winning. I put there a bunch of places of pieces randomly, just to give you a sense of what the map may look like. So don't worry if it doesn't make so much sense historically, but also something that is important. It still gives a sense of the general situation. We're at Antietam, right? So we got Lee and the Confederates that are defending in a strong position, gives them the advantage of terrain, but they're kind of bottled in. They don't have a lot of places to go. A bridge that will allow them to cross the Potomac has been blown. So they are in a good defensive position, but defending is all that they can do. And the Federals are coming. McClellan is commanding them, but he ain't feeling it. He ain't feeling it. So we know that historically wasn't particularly aggressive, and this is simulated by the fact that while the Union player has a lot of units, they're split into many small commands, and that means that when the Confederates counterattack, they can smash through those lines. They can move a lot of units at a time. The Confederates are there waiting, seeing those little small groups activating one at a time, and then you put some hurt there. So the lack of aggression that historically characterized the Union attack here is represented more by, I would say, difficulties in coordinating, launching large actions, and as the Union player, you're more forced to attack piecemeal. So the general idea is, again, we're gonna draw chits randomly from a pool to determine which group goes next. There may be attempts from the players to alter the order of activations, as I said, by trying to delay or by trying to go first, but then finally it's time for once we determine who activates, it's time for them to go. Units that are in an activated group, they can move. Again, terrain will slow them down, will cause them to lose part of the fraction of their movement or their movement template. And you cannot end just like sitting leisurely in front of an enemy. If you move close to them in their field of fire, you can do it only if you're attacking, otherwise that doesn't make any sense. Your attack is triggered when you move adjacent to an enemy unit. There can be a unit right behind you which supports you. It doesn't do anything just yet, but what they do is they may be able to continue the fight if the first unit right in front is exhausted or forced to retreat. Also, wouldn't it be great if you can outflank the enemies? That's always good. Not that easy to pull off, but pleasant if it happens. Pleasant for you, of course. When it comes to resolving battles, the units that are involved will roll dice, and the number of dice is indicated here. Most units in this game will roll 3 dice, and these are regular 6-sided dice, nothing fancy. So if you're at the pub and you forgot your dice, then look for an old battered copy of Monopoly and you're good. Roll dice, roll those dice. The 2 sides will roll dice simultaneously, and you score a hit on a 4, 5, or a 6. 50% chance, very intuitive. However, modifiers make that a little more interesting. So, for example, if the attacker is firing at a defender in terrain, then all the results have a -1. If you're firing into someone's flank, you get a +1. If they're firing at you through their flank, that's not good, and they get a -1. Also, the quality of the unit will determine the impact. Some units just can take it more, and so, for example, elite troops will, such as these ones, will absorb the first hit in a combat. Green units take the first hit as 2 hits, and the result of the hits, it depends on the condition. A unit can be fresh or spent, depending on the orientation of the sticker on top. A fresh unit taking a hit becomes spent, bloop, or with 2 hits, spent and retreats. 3 hits is eliminated, and spent units will retreat. If they're very lucky, they take only 1 hit, or most likely a spent unit will be eliminated by enemy hits. That's how we resolve each round of combat. After the first round of combat, both players have a chance of retreating. Again, if the attack is supported, then one unit may retreat and the other may continue. It's very important that you know when to cut your losses. You don't just sit there for the sake of it. And this is in general the idea. You activate units again in a random order. Continue like this. Try to do even better than your counterparts did historically. There are ways in which you will count victory points based on elimination of enemy units and other things, but frankly, especially when I play this kind of game like this one with a lot of ambiguities about the terrain, about the position, is this unit in command, and sometimes if I just change that one, the orientation of that commander, it may be in command or not in command, it may be touching, not touching. When it comes to games with ambiguities like this one, the way I like to play it is I play the battle, and it gets to a point where I decided who won and who lost, and to me that's the way it makes the most sense. If you watch my previous video for pub battles or Brandywine, you know that I like the system in general. And this is not a system, at least in these two games that I played, in which you have like 5 pages of core rules and 25 of unique scenario instructions like you have in other systems. It is a system in which basically the unique rules, at least in these two cases, are basically the setup. That's it. And a couple of like 2, 3 more rules. So it really feels consistent, which is, at least these days of the late pandemic, in which I'm always exhausted and I'm struggling to learn new rules even more than I used to. I'm very happy if there is a game that I kind of already know how to play. The unique rules are minimal, so I can rely on my knowledge of the rules and, most importantly, my general understanding of the procedures and of the flow. And now I'm playing with that core engine, but in a different battle with different command challenges, different terrain, different architecture. Exactly what I need these days, and that's what Antietam gives me here. It's a fun battle in a very solid system. Again, to me, it's a big advantage that the system plays more or less the same as what I had in Brandywine. I like that one. I like it here. So, how about this implementation specifically? You have a really nice situation here because it's such an asymmetrical situation. Clear, obvious subdivision of labor, so to speak, different roles from defender and attacker. With the chit pull mechanic that really works well here, as I briefly mentioned in the main segment, because simply by giving the Confederates fewer but larger commands and the Union all of these small commands that activate piecemeal, then you simply have a game that mirrors the command situation of the original battle in a way that feels organic. You don't have to add dumb rules for to represent McClellan's hesitation. You don't have to force the player, oh, this turn you don't activate, or you skip some turns, you can only activate somebody, stuff like that. It comes so organically. You pull your chits and your units advance in this like really disorganized fashion, and then the Confederates smash real hard, and then the remaining small groups that activate late, they're like, should we really do anything? As they're dealing with exhausted groups that are retreating. It's a big mess. So the chit pull mechanic here to me shines, and I like it in general. Anyways, I think I like almost every game with a chip. If you have a chit pull game, you gotta mess up really hard for me not to like it. So I am biased that way. But I think in this case, maybe even somebody else, not just somebody who's a big fan of that mechanic, would enjoy the implementation of the idea. You have a tough and tense situation that really may come down to a couple of intense pivotal roles toward the end, which is great because in any case throughout the game you have this mounting sense of dread, of tension. The situation feels even static, but as the two sides are pushing and the two lines are overall thin, and then you may be able as the Union to pierce a hole in there, and then the Confederates rush to fill the gap, and they start pushing back, and somewhere else you thought, I could have flanked them, and the Confederate cavalry is outflanking you. It's a situation which is overall somewhat static, but not dull. Static with tension as both sides are at risk of collapsing, as both sides have to really engage with the pace of the game, with the tempo of the game, figuring out where to move close to the baggage and to rally the units, when to stand, how many turns of battles you have to stay in. So it's a game that again is static if you're just looking at the board, but with a lot going on around that line and a little bit of pushing back and forth, but again more than meets the eye in sense of the tension and the growing tension that the game builds. So I definitely found it very enjoyable. Again, I played it solitaire. And frankly, I recommend for a game that has so many ambiguities when it comes to implementing movement and command on the map, I recommend playing it either solitaire or again with somebody who is playing with you because they want to explore the situation together with you rather than to really playing it competitively, really playing it as a tournament. And maybe that's the idea about the pub battle, not just that if you spill drinks on the mat it doesn't damage it, but it's something that as you're drinking at the pub with your friends, you want to have a good time with them, and you can chat about an historical battle or you can play the historical battle, but you're playing a battle in the same spirit as if you were having a friendly conversation with someone about it. So pub battles is a system that I like very much, and I definitely enjoy the implementation of the system that we have in Antietam 1862.